Hello and welcome to Tim's BMW Repairs and Information. This episode is all about additives. That's fuel additives, additives you can put in your petrol cap, which supposedly make it go a lot faster and get rid of misfires and so on. We'll look at the credibility of those. Then we'll look at oil additives, why you may well need them and why it's best not to use them in other circumstances. But I think today we'll start with fuel additives. Okay, let's start with petrol additives. Why don't I need it on my E31, which was built in 1998, but I may need it on my Z4, which was built in 2010. Yeah, quite a difference in ages. And I'll tell you the main reason. It's because for all its life, this E31 has been run on Shell V-Power. What the Z4 was run on in the years that I didn't own it, no idea. Could have been paraffin for all I know. Now, petrol is defined by BMW as having two different levels. There's something called top tier petrol, or probably top tier gas in the US, and stuff that isn't. Now, in 1995, they had an agreement between the main petrol suppliers, and that's the large ones, Esso, BP, Shell, and all the rest of it, to come up with a minimum specification for the petrol so that the engines would last longer. And the most important area of the petrol was the amount of carbon deposits that would be accumulated within the engine. Now, the areas that would accumulate, first of all, in the injectors. Now, of course, if you get carbon within the injectors, they may squirt out the same amount of petrol per pulse, but they won't atomize it correctly, and then you don't get proper combustion. Next place, valves, both the exhaust and the inlet valves can build up carbon. That can stop them sealing correctly. You may lose compression and cause all sorts of other problems when you've got an intake valve that doesn't fully close, because when that cylinder fires, it does blow back stuff into the manifold and cause all sorts of problems. Then you've got carbon on top of the pistons, which increases the compression ratio as well. You don't want to do that. Okay, so carbon is the problem. So BMW have their own product, BMW Twin Power Turbo. Yes, this one is the only additive that BMW specify. They don't specify any other additive to the petrol whatsoever. The interesting thing is that Twin Power Turbo is a Techron product which was designed by Chevron in the United States. And so it relies on that technology to break down carbon. BMW thought it was a good idea. In fact, in one of their bulletins, they said they've come across a lot of drivability problems in the US, not in the UK, in the US that was due to carbon buildup. Hence, they wanted to specify the minimum requirements for a petrol and put that in the top tier level, and also to specify a carbon remover, which Twin Power Turbo is. Now, of course, Chevron do actually make it, and their stuff is exactly the same. Now, there are other cleaners on the market, hundreds of them. For instance, Redline do injector cleaner. I've used it a few times when I thought there were some problems, nothing to do with it. But they are based on the same sort of technology. However, to be 100% sure, then you've got to use BMW stuff. And they're not stupid. They will only recommend this because at least it works. So you're going to need to use this for about 2 or 3 months. Every fill up you do, got to add a whole bottle of this to it, and that'll remove all the carbon that had built up in the injectors and the valves and the pistons and wherever else it goes. So that's what I'm going to have to do to the Z4. I haven't got drivability problems. In fact, I'm really excited and pleased about the performance of the Z4. First gear. Oh, blimey. Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's the way a car should drive. That is such exhilarating fun, especially when you're so low down. I have to check, I didn't push it all the way, but that was pretty fast. It doesn't hang around for a little 3 litre straight 6, that's for sure. but I will, just in case there is some carbon buildup, and that's the only reason you have to do it if you don't know what fuel was used in the car. Now, I've been driving the Z4 for a year, and it's quite likely those carbon deposits have now gone because I've been using Shell V-Power, which contains detergents. And that was one of the specified parts of the top tier level of petrol, is it had to have detergents. And the detergent had to work efficiently to get rid of any carbon buildup. So I've been doing it for a year in the Z4. It's possible that it's got rid of the carbon. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to use 4 of these, I should think, which is not going to be cheap, to be honest. And over the next 2 or 3 months, I'll put this in every tank full, and that should sort that out. Now, problems associated with carbon buildup, of course, problems with idle because the inlet and the exhaust valves don't fully close. So poor idling, misfires, lack of power at full power, and too much fuel consumption. Well, of course, each of those problems can be due to something else entirely different. Problem with the MAF, for instance, causes all of those problems. But a good place to start is here with removing all the carbon buildup that's in the engine. So if we have got drivability problems, then yep, I'd use this for 2 or 3 months. That'll get rid of it. Okay, so I think that's it for petrol. Now, BMW, as I say, don't recommend any other additive, and there's no point in using any additive. There are additives that increase the octane. That can cause a difference with the power output of the engine, but you're going to have to use the octane booster quite a few hundred miles, probably in about 1,000 miles, before the timing on these engines starts to advance to a point where it pulls out more power from the given fuel. That's the secret to this, is boosting the octane allows the engine to increase its advance, its spark advance in the engine, and that way you get more power. On the other side of that is the more you advance it, the more knocking you can get. That's why you use an octane booster. So that's how you can think of it. But these cars don't respond to a change in octane that quickly, which is why if you unfortunately have to use something like, in the UK, 95 octane fuel, yeah, it's going to take a few tankfuls of the 99 octane, which is what you need, to get the timing advance back again to get full power out. So don't bung in an octane increaser and thinking the car's going to go faster. It doesn't. You'll have to wait at least 2 or 3 tankfuls before it's going to make a difference, and you have to keep on adding it each time. BMW has set this so running at 99 octane fuel, it's about as far as it's going to advance, to be perfectly honest. It's not going to go much past that. So octane boosters will help you if you've been running on 95, but apart from that, yeah, run it on 99. There's no need for an octane boost at all. Now move on to oil additives, why you can use them that can be really helpful, and why you shouldn't use them as well. Right, let's move on to oil additives. Do you need any oil additives in your lovely running engine? No, you don't, as long as you change your oil every year, or 10,000 miles, whichever comes the soonest, with high grade oil like Castrol Edge 0W30, which I use in my E31, and I use 5W Forte in the Z4, and so on. As long as you do that, you don't need an oil additive because it's got them all in there in the first place, including, again, like the petrol detergents to keep all the oil waste clear and so on. Now, one special circumstance is when you've bought a second-hand car with the N62 engine and it's burning oil. That's a problem. Now, if the original owner and the one before that probably had changed his oil every year, you wouldn't have the problem. The problem is the long oil changes, and eventually the hole in the top of the seal starts to enlarge and oil goes past it, and then it gets burnt. Now, first of all, we have to make absolutely sure it's not the PCV valves, part of the crankcase ventilation system, that's causing the problem. I think I've had over 200,000 hits on my video about replacing the PCVs on the N62, so it's worth checking that out to start with. But if you change the PCV valves and it still smokes, then it's very likely to be the valve stem seals, which is the problem, where they've enlarged. Now, in that situation, there are additives that will swell them back up again, and that's the Forte or the Wynns stop leak. They both do the same thing. They swell up nitrile rubber parts, And what that does is squash onto the valve stem itself so it doesn't leak oil through it. It works as long as it's done soon enough. If you leave it too long, it doesn't, because eventually what happens is the valve stem just wears out the material that goes around the stem, and then it's just going to leak no matter how much an additive you put in there. They usually help a bit, even if it's gone past that state. My 650 in my E64 with the N62, I didn't have problems after I'd done the PCV valves at all. If I ever got a slightest bit of leak, then yet the Wynns stop leak is what I'd use. And the reason for that is the N62 just loves to leak oil everywhere. Leaks them out of the valve covers, out of the alternator bracket, front and rear seals, anywhere at all. They're two bits of metal joined together and it's got oil behind them. It leaks like a sieve. They really do. So I've got no problems using Wynns stop leak in them, because that at least then reduces the amount of oil that it leaves on the drive. And it used to leave a reasonable amount of oil on the drive, unlike the E31, which doesn't leak anything, nor the Z4 leak anything. So for those cars, I didn't need anything at all. There was no point at all putting an oil additives in there. As long as you've got some decent oil, then there's absolutely no problem at all. So yeah, the Forte and the Wynns stuff, that's what I'd recommend if you're burning oil. But for any other reason, then no, they don't make the slightest bit of difference. But where you've got a problem and you want to fix it, where you're leaking oil, or you've got oil going past the valve stem seals, then yeah, best to use one. It'll elongate the use of your N62 engine, that's for sure, without you having to take it apart and get some oaf to do it, and he puts things in and breaks it and says, oh, it was never the problem in the first place. But it's £5 for that job, thank you very much, and then you can't have your car back until you paid it. Generally, there's absolutely no reason to use them at all. Okay, so I think that'll do for today. I think we've blabbed on for quite long enough. Put the thumbs up if that helped you. I'm sure there's lots of things I've forgotten. Put the thumbs up if you're happy. Keep commenting, love the comments, always trying to reply as soon as possible. If you commented over about 6 months ago, yeah, try again. I've forgotten all about those. And yeah, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.